Thank you. No introduction is really necessary, but Emily Mann, of course, is the artistic director of McCarter Theatre, and I believe this is her 16th season. And she is currently directing a brand new play by Christopher Durang called Miss Witherspoon. And Chris Durang has been delighting us with his plays, at least since the 1970s. The one I remember most, of course, is Sister Mary Ignatius Explains It All for You. All for you. Right. Okay. Miss Witherspoon, just to put a plug in there, I believe begins previews on September 9th. Is that correct? And it opens on September 16th. How did this come about, this collaboration? Was it a commission? How did it happen, McCarter and Chris?
Well, how did it happen? Ooh, go pound. It was a commission.
Mm-hmm.
Chris and I have known each other for a very long time, since we were undergraduates. And I've been watching and enjoying his work for a few decades now. And had always hoped that one day we would work together. And it was actually, happily, we were not in touch, even though I watched what he was doing for years and years. 9/11 actually brought us together, oddly enough. So there was one good thing, personally, that came out of it. Somehow, Chris was there. We'd had a few lunches and talked, and he was living nearby. And I emailed him after the event, completely traumatized, and he emailed back, and this started a very lengthy email writing relationship, and he really helped me get through it. And that just started us talking a lot more, and then finally I said, well, I don't know, would you be interested in a commission for the theater? And he said, let me think about it, as I recall. And then he thought about it, and as he often does, very deeply, and came back and said yes. So Chris has been thinking about this particular project, I think since, this started as a monologue, did it not? And that was at Town Hall when? Shortly after 9/11, right?
Yeah, just so you know, and can you hear okay? Yes. The play isn't about 9/11.
No.
However, no. The play does mention 9/11, and the first piece of the play was written a year after September 11th. There was a theater event in New York that was 4 days, and they asked, many playwrights to write. You're supposed to write like 5 to 6 minutes, something about 9/11, and I was one of the ones they asked, and it still felt very close, and I couldn't really think what to write, and I went about it very sideways. I wrote a piece about a woman who had great fears of the world, and she was obsessed with Skylab. I don't know if you remember, in the play they describe it, what it was, but it was this space station that was put up in the late 70s, and sometime, I think in the early 80s, they announced that they lost control of it, and it was going to be falling to Earth. And they didn't know where, but they were pretty sure that statistically you'd be fine. But this, this drove, I was always a little uncomfortable about Skylab. But this character I wrote is very upset by it, and she's actually committed suicide. She claims because it came from their own perspective so much, while the actors were always coming from, I need to make this play work. Oh, I'm not understanding this. Can you tell me what it's supposed to be? And I just, so anyway, hearing the actors do it is really important.
But there's one other thing about Chris's work that is key, and this company of actors understand so well, is that in order for it to be truly funny, it has to be incredibly truthful. The logic has to track, and the deeper you go often, the funnier it is. So if you're trying to play for a laugh, that's really not how Chris's work operates. It's really about the humor that comes out of the reality.
And of course, there's a lot of visual comedy as well as verbal comedy in this play, isn't there? I mean, Veronica Witherspoon is somewhere between 40 and 60 years old, but she gets to play a baby and a dog.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And that transformation.
Well, when I was writing it, by the way, the part is from 40 to 60, lest anyone think Christina's 60. Or even 40. I think you're 29.
Okay.
But when I was writing the play, and it was actually an unusual play to write because I wasn't quite sure how to write a play about the netherworld and would that sustain, and obviously one has to make it up, more or less. So then I thought, you know what, I need her to go back to Earth. I can't just have her be in the netherworld. So then I thought, okay, so she goes back to Earth and, gosh, she's a baby? So then, I don't know if I ever told you this, for a while I thought of having Miss Witherspoon, because it's to get used to dealing with him, and then come back for like the first run through. We actually had our first stumble through today, and I have been there much more. But anyway, I think it's good for I think it's good for playwrights to be there, but I also think it's good to go away from time to time too.
And do you rewrite? Do you like to rewrite during rehearsal?
I like to do minor rewrites. A different way of putting it is that whenever I hear of sometimes friends who are like rewriting a play radically in rehearsal, that to me is my idea of hell. And I did have an example of that, not quite as badly, but my play Sex and Longing at Lincoln Center a few years ago had many good things in it, and the actors were wonderful. The critics just hated it. I didn't read the reviews, but I gathered that they were just poisonous. But there were things really wrong with it, and I, particularly during the previews, particularly the last third just wasn't landing, and I felt that it was a lot my fault.
There were cut tiny, snips and trims, that also can happen once you learn in front of an audience what the rhythms are. But I'm with Chris. I like to know that it's ready before the first reading of the first rehearsal. And if that means that the two of you are talking endlessly for 2 weeks and have, sleepless nights until you finish it, fine. But I'd like to go into rehearsal with this is as good as I know how to do it right now.
Had you done a reading of this play at McCarter or privately before?
Yeah, we did private readings so that Chris knew where he was and I knew what he was thinking. And it was a way to prepare for me as a director as well, to hear it, because I learn a lot from how it sounds out of actors' mouths.
This is going off the topic of your play a little bit, and we'll come back and then open it up here. But a playwright named Marcia Norman recently was quoted as saying that she thought this is the age of readings, and readings have really been the death of playwrights. And Chris may have heard this because he works with Marcia Norman at Juilliard. I don't know. Any response to that?
Well, I have a lot to say about that. I don't know if Chris, I don't know which hat to put on. As a writer, I need to hear my work. Mm-hmm. As a director, I need to hear the work so I can really talk to the writer. As an artistic director, I need to help a play along, and as much as the writer needs in terms of workshop or readings or anything else, I want to give to the writer so that it is ready to be produced. So what Marcia's talking about is that some theaters will do readings, which is like auditioning the play, and the artistic director or the artistic staff does not take the time to deeply think about.
This play doesn't feel to me about, well, no, I take it back. There is, religion is a important sub-theme in the play, and it just because it's about the afterlife, and in it, it's not that I believe in reincarnation, but I kind of believe in reincarnation. So I'm sort of entertaining the thought in my brain. Mm-hmm. But writing this woman who's in the afterlife and suddenly learning about reincarnation, she is very upset about it, and she says, I'm sorry, I was raised a Christian, I want to see St. Peter and the blah, 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 and she's angry about it. also because she doesn't want to go back. She says she likes the clarity of heaven, hell, and purgatory. And so just the topic does come up, and I have a convoluted way that the Indian guide says that basically you get to see whatever heaven you believe in. And that's my way of letting people feel comfortable that, you know, so if you believe in St. Peter, that's who you'll see. And the Indian guide says to Miss Witherspoon, the problem was that you actually stopped believing very early in your last life, and so your soul is choosing to see me. And anyway, so that's part of the struggle that they have. But I sometimes I am very insular because we've been having discussions with the cast, and I remember, because somebody referred to the character as a lapsed Catholic, and I thought, I don't lapsed Catholic, she's just Christian, it doesn't say. But I forgot that, and you must correct me if I'm wrong, but purgatory is a very Catholic thing. It's not universally believed in different Christian sects, and I just forgot that. I think maybe some of them, but so I guess she must be a lapsed Catholic then.
When you write, do echoes of your previous plays come into your current writing? Do you like that, or do you want to shut that off? How does that work?
I don't know if I've actually thought about it. I didn't feel echoes in this play particularly. Do I write for a specified time, and do I write sort of one play at a time, or sometimes write more than one? I mostly don't write for a specified time, and I used to feel very guilty about it. Well, for a while I felt guilty because I thought the people who went from 9 to 5 and put on different clothes and went to their office and wrote were being more serious. And then I decided, then I got superior, and I thought, no, they need to not write a few days and take in some life. And now that I'm in my wisdom, I feel that I realize that people just have different ways that they like to work. And I tend to work on impulse, and I must say that means I can really be a procrastinator in a bad way. But on the other hand, especially when I was younger, but sometimes the real sign is that when I'm washing dishes or drying them and I suddenly get an idea and I have to put them down and go write it down, that my brain is working. So that's exciting. And I did have a period in which I wrote Beyond Therapy and Baby with the Bathwater, where I made myself write a certain time, 4 hours a day, because I'd had a long writer's block, and I thought I have to. And every time I sat down to write, I was hating what I was doing, and then I said, you have to keep writing. Yes, it does, and when I said yes to the commission, I found out that the McCarter, for 3 springs now, has had this writer's retreat, 4, and there's usually like 10 to 12 playwrights and other artists sometimes that you invite, and they're put up in this lovely Palmer house down the street. And anyway, I was asked to go to that for 2 summers, and the first summer in particular, I only had that monologue that I told you about, and so I really, and the setup of the retreat is that you write in your room in the day, or you go wander the streets and look at the trees if you want, and then at night everybody comes together for communal dinners at the various restaurants, and it was a lovely experience. And I wrote a great deal of Miss Witherspoon's during that first retreat, and Miss Witherspoon is actually her nickname. Her real name is Veronica something. I didn't give her a last name. And Veronica, Miss Mariama calls her Miss Witherspoon, and Miss Witherspoon says, well, that's not my name. And she says, I know, but all the spirits up here have nicknamed you that because you're so difficult. You're like some, I can't remember the wording, but some difficult character in an Agatha Christie novel. And so I wanted a name that sounded like an Agatha Christie novel, British woman, and I had, on my lunch, noted Witherspoon Street, and I thought, oh, that would be a good name. And then I thought, well, also it's on commission for McCarter, and that would be nice to name it for a street in town. And I have to admit my ignorance. I didn't realize how important a name Witherspoon is. I've since learned in Princeton history. But for the street, yes, she's named for the street.
Yeah.
in my head.
And solving all kinds of things that you don't normally have to do. For example, what does the netherworld look like? And Chris even wrote in a stage direction, this will be a challenge. And it was. So he's just great. And none of us has worked with him before. The lighting designer I worked with only once before, another young designer I'm very excited about named Jeff Kreuter, who did the lighting for the Stephen Dietz play last year, Last of the Boys. And the costume designer, you've seen a lot of his work, it's Jess Goldstein. And Jess did Romeo and Juliet. He's done about 7 or 8 plays at McCarter. And I've worked with him a number of times. And the sound is by a man named Darren West, who did the bells with us, and he's just brilliant. And he's in rehearsal with us every day with all of his equipment, creating along with the actors and me and how to build.
Perhaps you might actually, sound is very important in this play.
Hugely,
you might want to
yes.
tell why. Every time she reincarnates, right? There's a
Yes.
She's sort of sucked down to earth, so that gives.
Yeah.
Well, I heard the sound today. It's terrific.
It is terrific.
Yeah,
Isn't it? Yeah.
it helps conjure it up what's happening to her, and then Christine gets to also, play that. Oh my God.
It's really as important as the visuals, and
Right.
he's working with the actors to support what they're doing.
You had a third question. You had a third question?
No, that was well, I could ask about it too.
I'll tell you after.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I didn't quite catch the name of the set designer.
David Corrins. Oh, I didn't say it.
Yes, sir.
Well, it was rumored that I'd given up theater because of Frank Rich, and I did in a way take a vacation from it. On the other hand, in retrospect, I think I was also having a bit of a writer's block, and as I've also gotten older, looking back, even though I think they were hard to live through, I don't believe there's any objective artistic opinion. You can't say Marriage of Bette and Boo is fabulous no matter what. If he didn't like it, what, is he supposed to lie? So I just find myself more, knock wood, sanguine about it. And when I just did Laughing Wild up in Boston, there was a revival. I'm 20 years too old for it now, but the age isn't that important. I actually didn't read the reviews, which every so often I manage to do. So much is hard when you're starting out, because of course, first of all, everybody wants to be liked, of course. And when you're young, you also want to know, am I any good? Am I not? And and it's such a hard psychological thing, because say if you're really a fragile person and you get one terrible review and one good review, the fragile person may just decide to focus on the bad one. And it's almost a running gag that people who have bad reviews can usually quote them verbatim.
Absolutely.
And you can't quote the good
Can't
ones
quote
usually.
the good ones. That's right.
So it's a really troublesome thing. I do think it's about hanging in there and longevity and so forth.
Okay. I think on that very positive note, I want to thank both of you very much. This was wonderful. And
Thank you.
Yeah.